Deep within the shadows of an underwater cave, a diver has just set multiple world records. While soaking in the joy of his victory, he discovers the skeletal remains of a diver at the bottom. Little did he know this chance encounter would cost him his life, and the camera mounted on his helmet captured the entire sequence of his tragic end. This is the story we are telling today. The diving tragedy at Boesmansgat, South Africa. Boesmansgat is located on the edge of the Kalahari Desert in South Africa's northern cape. The entire cave sits at an altitude of 1,550 meters. From the outside, it looks like nothing special. Looking down from the top, it appears to be just a stagnant pond filled with green algae, but it is an underwater sinkhole capable of shattering diving records. Boesmansgat reaches a depth of 282 meters, making it the third deepest known freshwater cave in the world. In 1996, South African diver Nuno Gomes set the world record for the deepest cave dive here. In 2004, Verna van Schaick set the women's world record for the deepest dive at this site. In 2005, our protagonist Dave planned to challenge Boesmansgat as well. Born in 1954, Dave was originally an Australian pilot. He joined Cathay Pacific in Hong Kong in 1989. After his first dive in the Philippines in 1999, 45-year-old Dave became completely obsessed with the sport. By 2004, he had completed over 300 dives. Along the way, Dave met a like-minded partner, Don Shirley. Dave's decision to challenge Boesmansgat was prompted by Don's introduction. On October 28, 2004, 50-year-old Dave and Don arrived at Boesmansgat, ready to break the world record for the deepest dive. Before entering the water, the two found a memorial plaque on the shore. It commemorated a diver named Dion Dreyer who died there. This discovery foreshadowed the tragedy to come. With everything ready, Dave dove in first, carrying 6 cylinders, starting the 333rd dive of his career. Relying on his extensive cave diving experience, the process went quite smoothly, because Dave was using a closed-circuit rebreather. There were no bubbles underwater, and it was eerily quiet. Shortly after, Don also entered the water, but he would not follow Dave into the deep dive. Instead, he waited above to assist with his partner's decompression. On the other side, Dave took only 13 minutes to reach a depth of 270 meters. At this moment, Dave's light could clearly illuminate the cave floor. This meant they had successfully achieved their goal, and broke 4 world records in one go. At that time, Dave had only been diving for 5 years. But before he could celebrate, a strange object appeared before his eyes. Dave moved closer to look, found it was a body wearing a wetsuit. The torso was covered in silt, while the exposed hands and head had turned into bone. Relying on his strong mental state, Dave quickly calmed down after a brief moment of fear. He was almost 100% certain it was Dion's body, but since he wasn't equipped to recover the remains, after his planned bottom time was up, Dave began his scheduled decompression ascent, eventually returning to the surface after 9.5 hours. Afterward, Dave contacted Dion's parents to learn the details of the accident. It turned out that on December 17, 1994, 20-year-old Dion Dreyer dove into Boesmansgat. He was an experienced diver with over 200 cave dives, but he lost his life in this accident. His exact cause of death was unknown. According to his companion's recollections, in the final 30 seconds, Dion seemed to lose consciousness and drifted to the bottom, so he likely died from nitrogen narcosis. After all search efforts proved fruitless, Dion's parents placed a memorial plaque on the shore. While mourning their son, they also hoped other divers might help find his remains. After learning the situation, Dave decided to help the parents recover their son, though his friend Don thought the risk was far too great, and urged him to reconsider. His experience of over 300 dives in 5 years made Dave believe he was capable, and felt it was a mission he had to complete. Dave and Don then briefly returned to their daily lives. While working intensely to finalize the recovery plan, they eventually assembled a team of 7 veteran diving experts, including Verna van Schaick as the dive supervisor. To estimate the condition of the remains, they consulted with forensic experts. After learning the body might be skeletonized, Dave had his wife sew a custom body bag, specifically to prevent the remains from falling apart. On January 8, 2005, the group arrived at the cave for final preparations. The recovery plan was arranged as follows. At 6 a.m., Dave began his dive, descending alone to the cave floor at 270 meters. He would have 5 minutes to place Dion's remains in the bag, then bring it to 220 meters to hand over to Don. After that, Dave would begin his slow decompression ascent, while Don would continue passing the remains up, and start his own decompression protocol. In this relay fashion, about an hour and 20 minutes after the start, Dion's body would reach the surface. It is clear that the most complex part of the process was the decompression. As depth and water pressure increase, the nitrogen breathed in dissolves into the body. If a diver ascends too quickly, nitrogen forms bubbles throughout the body, leading to decompression sickness. So divers must ascend slowly when returning to the surface, to let the nitrogen gradually leave the body. The deeper you go and the longer you stay, the longer the required decompression time. Therefore, Dave at the bottom had to fight for every second. Otherwise, the rest of the team could face trouble due to his delay. In addition, this operation drew television coverage. All divers were equipped with underwater cameras to fully capture this highly challenging recovery mission. With everything ready, Dave told Dawn, "See you in 20 minutes," and dove into the cave alone with his mission. In just 11 minutes, he had reached the bottom. That was a minute and a half faster than planned. He quickly located Dion's remains and began clearing away the silt, ready to put them in the bag. But in the next moment, the body suddenly started to float upward, instantly stirring up silt and causing visibility to plummet. Before Dave could react, the remains, with only a skull inside the mask, drifted straight toward him. Dave originally thought that after a long soak, Dion's body would be nothing but bones. However, protected by the silt and cold environment, except for the skeletonized head and hands, the rest was relatively well preserved. This meant the body was more buoyant than expected. Dave tried to get it into the body bag, but it was like he was wrestling with the corpse. During the struggle, time was slipping away fast. 13 minutes after Dave entered the water, Don reached his assigned position as planned. He should have seen Dave's light by then, but there was only endless darkness before him. Don's heart sank. Instinct told him something had happened to Dave. He struggled with whether to descend and rescue his partner, because Dave had explicitly told everyone before.
I really must emphasize that the most important person on the dive is you. Okay? It's not me. For me, the most important on the dive is me. Okay? You must look after yourselves. So if you have a problem, you deal with your problem and forget about me. It cannot be any other way. Okay? It's better to have one person dead than two. Okay? It's as simple as that. Yeah, simple.
Ultimately, friendship won over reason. Don decided to dive to the bottom at 270 meters, risking his own life to save his friend. But when he reached about 250 meters, he heard a sharp popping sound. Don checked his wrist and found the rebreather controller had failed due to extreme pressure. This meant Don lost critical real-time oxygen data. He would have to manually inject oxygen into the rebreather. There was still no movement from Dave's location. The hope of rescue was nearing zero. If he insisted on going down, he would surely meet the same fate as Dave, and potentially endanger the teammates waiting above. Don stared into the abyss. After a brief pause, he had no choice but to ascend. At the same time, Mark and his partner from the third team had reached their station. After waiting for 6 minutes, they saw only a single beam of light in the darkness below. Something was clearly wrong. However, their gas was also running low. By protocol, they had to ascend immediately. After returning to 120 meters, the two used a slate to inform Peter and Lo of the situation. Peter and Lo then passed the message to Stephen. But after passing the message, Stephen did not begin his decompression ascent, because he and Dawn had an agreement that if things went wrong, they would meet at 80 meters. Even though he wasn't sure if the person below was Dawn, after Stephen reached the designated depth, he finally recognized the owner of the light. Dawn slowly handed over the slate. It read, "Dave is not coming back." To get the news back quickly and safely, Stephen ignored the decompression protocols and ascended to the surface as fast as possible. 2 hours after Dawn entered the water, he had ascended to 46 meters. 2 spare cylinders were stored there. He took only one, leaving the other for Dave, even though he knew his friend likely wouldn't return. In the next moment, Don felt a wave of nausea, because he dived far deeper than planned, and ascended rapidly to inform the others. His decompression schedule was completely ruined. Severe symptoms of the bends began to set in. Along with a splitting headache and nausea, Don had to remove his rebreather to vomit, then put it back on immediately. In intense pain and the pitch-black loneliness, he endured 7 long hours alone before surfacing. Don was immediately placed in the standby decompression chamber, and later sent to the hospital for treatment. Though his life was saved, it left him with permanent injuries. The team then held a simple memorial for Dave at the cave entrance. This massive recovery operation ultimately ended quietly in tragedy. But the story didn't end there. 3 days later, when divers went down to recover equipment, they noticed an extra line at 50 meters. A diver pulled it out of curiosity. The line seemed to move. Moving closer, they discovered it was actually 2 bodies tangled together and caught on the rocks, and they were Dave and Dion. After they were brought to the surface, by watching Dave's underwater camera footage, they finally understood how he died. It turned out that after Dave descended, he quickly followed the guideline to Dion's location. Dave was busy working with both hands, and placed his dive light on the cave floor. The floating body first gave Dave a fright. His breathing quickened. Then, after he struggled to get the body into the bag's line got tangled with the dive light. By then, the planned 5 minutes had passed. This unexpected situation caused Dave's breathing to become heavier and heavier. Because he was using a rebreather, his excessive carbon dioxide output exceeded the capacity of the rebreather's scrubber, causing Dave to repeatedly inhale high levels of CO2, triggering acute hypercapnia, which eventually led to slow reactions and a loss of consciousness. This explains why Dave was holding scissors in his hand, but never actually cut anything. And even with a powerful dive light, visibility wouldn't exceed 20 meters unless pointed upward. This also explains why Don saw no movement below when he reached 250 meters. Dave had tied the body to himself in his final moments, hoping to float to the surface with the remains, at least fulfilling his promise to Dion's family. In the end, he did exactly that, just in the way that everyone least wanted to see.